I am Tina Seelig, and I play two roles here today. First, I am the host normally, but today I am also the speaker. So I'm going to give you a little bit of my background so that you know actually who am I besides the person who usually introduces our other guests. I am the executive director of the Stanford Technology Ventures Program, and along with my wonderful colleagues Tom Byers and Kathy Eisenhardt, who are the faculty directors, we run the Stanford Technology Ventures Program. And we spend all of our efforts thinking about research and teaching and outreach efforts all related to high-tech entrepreneurship. My background is a little bit unusual. I actually did my PhD over at the med school. I did have my PhD in neuroscience. And after that, I've done a bunch of different things. I was a management consultant. I was a multimedia producer. I worked at Compaq. I started a company. And I also have written a whole bunch of books. And this talk is about the most recent book I wrote called What I Wish I Knew When I Was 20. Now, there's an interesting story behind this talk because I actually gave a talk by the same name 3 years ago right here. At that point, this talk was extremely raw. It was brand new. It was just the beginning of some ideas. But what happened is the talk ended up really getting some traction. And a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, I was asked by HarperCollins to turn this talk into a book. And so over the last year, I've spent a lot of time digging into these concepts and came up with a bunch of really new and interesting stories, and in fact, changed my point of view on some of these ideas. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's inside this book and invite you at the end to ask whatever questions you might have. Okay, so as part of my role at STVP, I have the incredible honor of teaching a course on creativity and innovation. In fact, I see some of my students in the room. And the entire overarching theme of this class is that all problems are opportunities. The bigger the problem, the bigger the opportunity. In fact, anyone in my class would probably be able to recite that in their sleep, right? Any problem is an opportunity. The bigger the problem, the bigger the opportunity. And what I do is I give students problems. They start out as really small problems, and over the course of the quarter, they get bigger and bigger and bigger until finally they just get extremely comfortable taking on challenges and looking at them through the lens of possibilities. Now, don't just listen to me. I mean, why should you listen to me telling you that problems are opportunities? This is something that is embraced by the entire venture capital community and the whole entrepreneurial community. In fact, I'm going to play you a video clip that I play all the time. It's one of my favorites. It's by Vinod Khosla. Do you guys know who Vinod Khosla is? Who is he? Founder of Sun Microsystems, successful venture capitalist. And this is a 27-second long clip where he talks about problems as opportunities.
One thing I would say is find a big problem. To me, any big problem is a big opportunity. Because if you think about it, no problem, no solution, no company. Right? It's very simple. Every big problem is a big opportunity. If you don't have a big problem, you don't have a big opportunity. No. Nobody will pay you to solve a non-problem.
In fact, I see that was a talk where Tom Byers, my colleague, was interviewing him, and it's a clip that we play in all of our classes because this is the essence, the core of entrepreneurship. So how do you teach this? How do you teach people to turn problems into opportunities and look at the world as opportunity rich? Is it like this? Is this what you do? You line people up in rows and columns, right? In fact, it kind of looks like this room right here. Everyone lined up in rows and columns, the chairs bolted to the floor. God forbid, you actually talk to anyone else or move around. It looks like everyone's taking a multiple choice test where they're filling out one right answer to every question, filling it out with a number 2 pencil. Is that how you teach creativity? I don't think so. This is the way you teach creativity. You get people out of their comfort zone. You get them jumping off of perfectly good cliffs. You get them to feel it in their gut. It's not necessarily a completely intellectual experience. You need to be able to take risks, to do things you haven't done before, to take on problems that no one knows the answer to. So what I'm going to do is tell you about some of the things that we do in our classes to help people have this experience. So a few years ago, I was the D School, the Design Institute at Stanford, was just starting off. And there was the first year, there was a boot camp class. And there was a whole cast of thousands of people teaching the class. And I was asked to teach 1 week that focused on entrepreneurship. Tina, will you teach 1 week that gets folks understanding the general principles and the ideas of entrepreneurial thinking? So I thought, what can I do? So what I did is I gave the students, every team, an envelope. And in that envelope was seed funding. How many of you know this story? Okay, we're going to cut to the chase in a second and go on to the next stories. But this one is the first assignment I gave. They had an envelope, and in that envelope was seed funding. They had 4 or 5 days to plan as long as they wanted, but as soon as they opened that envelope, they had 2 hours to make as much money as possible. Now, for those people who don't know this, the folks who don't know this story, how much money do you think I gave them? Any guesses? $500. Anyone else? Yeah? $5. I bet you know this story, okay? Yeah, I know you know this story. So, okay, let's cut to the chase here. I gave them $5 and 2 hours to make as much money as possible. So, what would you do if you were given this challenge? What would you do? Think about it. Does anyone have any ideas? Any thoughts? Organize a party, invite everyone. Are you going to basically charge people? Absolutely. You're going to charge people to come to your party. Love that idea. Great. I'd love to come. How much are you going to charge people? $10. $10? And how much is the party going to cost? About $50. So you only need 5 people. You break even. Okay, good. Anyone else? Another idea? What you might do with $5 in 2 hours? First of all, you guys get gold stars because usually when I ask that question, the first thing anyone ever says is go to Las Vegas or buy a lottery ticket. Really, they feel like, well, I should take a really high risk for earning a big reward. Of course, we all know that the high likelihood is that you're going to walk away with nothing. Well, let me tell you the clue. The teams that made the most money didn't use the $5 at all. They realized that the $5 was actually a limitation. They realized that that framed the problem way too tightly, and that if they looked at the skills they had and the opportunities around them, that was worth a lot more. So with that in mind, what do you think you would do? Any thoughts? Okay. Since you're being shy, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. One team set up a stand in the middle of the student union here at Stanford in front of Tressiter. And they just said, they put up a little sign that said, we will measure your bicycle tire pressure for free. But if you need air in the tires, we will charge you $1. Pretty cool? Well, first they thought they were taking advantage of their fellow classmates because people could go around the corner and easily get their bicycle bike tires pumped up for free. But you know what? They realized halfway through the 2 hours that people were incredibly appreciative. And so what they did is they stopped asking for $1. And halfway through, they asked for donations instead. And you know what happened? People paid them much more. And they walked away at the end of 2 hours with a couple $100. Pretty cool? Now, there were some interesting things that fell out of this experiment. First of all, they realized that iterating along the way, experimenting was incredibly valuable. They could have stayed in their dorm room, written a business plan, and they never would have learned the fact, all of these things they learned along the way. That by asking for donations, they actually made more. So by rapidly prototyping, experimenting, and trying things out along the way, they actually learned a tremendous number of things. Another team did something equally clever. They realized that in Palo Alto, I'm sure all of you know this as well, there are really long lines at restaurants on Saturday night. In fact, sometimes it's an hour and a half wait to get a table at the most popular restaurants. So what they did is they split up and they made reservations at all the most popular restaurants. And as those times came up, they sold the reservations. Yeah? Question?
I've always wondered why bombs don't do that. Is there like a law against it?
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. Why did you reservations? Yeah, well, they realized, they were basically scalping restaurant reservations. And so, people with a screaming, hungry kid, for any of you who know what that's like, they're like, of course I'll pay $20 to skip in front of you in line. I got to feed my baby. So here was another thing. Again, they learned some really cool things along the way. First, the women were much better at selling the reservations. People trusted them more. Go figure. Okay, so the guys ran around making reservations, the women sold them. But here was another really important insight. They realized this worked best in the restaurants that use those buzzers that tell you when their time comes up, because it was something very tangible they could pass off, sell. So it was kind of like a reverse hand grenade. Here, it's going to go off in 5 minutes. Take it, okay? The other thing that happened as a result of that is they traded the buzzers. They had now traded up to a later reservation. Pretty cool? So these, pretty cool? So they realized, these students walked away with a huge insight. And that is they should never look around and say, I don't have any money in my pockets. Because there were opportunities everywhere just waiting to be solved. Whether it was tires that needed to get filled up, or whether it was, restaurant reservations. But the team that made the most money challenged all of the assumptions. They broke all the rules, and they continued to open the frame of the problem beyond anything that I imagined. They realized the most valuable thing they had was not the $5 and was not the 2 hours. They realized the most valuable thing they had was their 3-minute presentation time, which they sold to a company that wanted to recruit those students. Pretty cool? So I thought, we're on to something. This was so great. This was a mind-blowing, life-changing experience for the students in this class. And again, we pushed them off of that cliff and gave them a problem without any right answers. In fact, the answers they came up with were much better than anything I could have put on the answer key, right? But I had one problem after I gave this assignment, and it was really preying on my mind. And that problem was that I felt that I was communicating that value is measured in terms of making money. And we all know that that's not the case, right? That there's value is created in so many different ways besides, cold, hard cash. So the next quarter in my creativity class, I decided to give this assignment again. But instead of giving the students $5, I gave them a handful of paper clips. 10 paper clips and 4 hours. I told them, you now have 1 week, you have 10 paper clips and 4 hours to create as much value as possible. Somehow, you gotta use these paper clips. And I was inspired by the guy who started with one red paper clip and traded to a house. You guys know the story? How many people do not know the story of the one red paper clip? Okay, this was a guy a few years ago who basically said, I really, really, really want a house, and all I have is one red paper clip. So he set up a blog and decided to trade the paper clip up until he had a house. And he did it. He started with a paperclip, he traded it for a pen, and the pen for a doorknob, and the doorknob for this and that and this and that. And over the course of a year, he ended up with a house. Now, I believe the house was like in Saskatchewan, but it still was a house, okay? So I thought I was being very generous giving these students 10 paperclips. So, okay, folks, what would you do with 10 paperclips? 4 hours, 10 paperclips. Any thoughts? Pick some locks. Okay, let's cut to the chase because I'm going to show you what one of the teams did. Is there some way for us to lower the lights a little bit? Is that something that I should have asked at all? What's that? Okay, let's show it and see if it works.
Bad boys, what you want, what you want, what you gonna do when Chevy John Brown come for you? Tell me what you wanna do, what you gonna do. Yeah, bad boys, what you gonna do, what you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do, what you gonna do when they come for you? When you were 8 and you had bad traits, you go to school and learn the golden rule. So why are you acting like a bloody fool if you get hot?
Okay, at this point, I kid you not, I was lying on the floor, hyperventilating. I thought, I really did love that job, okay? Because I thought, I am fired now. I mean, I am out of here. There's no way I'm talking my way out of this one. The students, I said, how did you do this? And what did you do? They said, it was a fraternity party. Things get stolen all the time. No one even noticed. Then they said, just kidding. So what they actually did is they took the 10 paper clips and they traded them for some poster board. And they made a sign that said, Stanford students for sale. Buy one, get 2 free. Okay? And they went to the Stanford Shopping Center and they sat in the middle of the shopping center with their sign. And they started asking people, what can we do for you? I mean, just like this fellow suggested, what can I do for you? You guys are too creative here, So they, first people asked them, well, can you carry my bags to my car? Can you take out the recycling? But eventually they learned how to sell themselves a little better. They realized they were engineering students. They had a lot more skills than carrying bags and taking out recycling. One guy asked them if they could, design a transceiver for him, and they said, yes, we could, but it'd probably take a little more than 4 hours. So a woman came up who was a business exec, and she said, boy, you're in a course on creativity. I've got a business problem I'm really struggling with at work. Would you mind coming to my office and leading a brainstorming session with my team? They said, no problem. We know how to do this. And so they went to her office. They led a brainstorming session for a couple hours. She was so delighted with the outcome. She paid them in 3 computer monitors that she didn't need. Pretty cool? So they arrived in class with 3 computer monitors, starting with 10 paper clips. The other teams did things that were equally inventive, and I don't have all the videos there to show you, but I want to tell you this was the start of something very big. Because then what happened is I got a call from the Kauffman Foundation. Many of you might have heard of them. They are the big entrepreneurship foundation there in Kansas City, and they decided about 3 years ago to launch National Entrepreneurship Week. And they called me and said, Tina, would you take the lead at Stanford in making this happen? I said, no problem. So I called up my friends, emailed my friends across campus who were in the business school and the law school and the med school and the engineering school all over, and said, we're going to put together this week. So we did this sort of open source week where everybody took a day to do something. And we had talks and lectures and workshops and et cetera, et cetera. But it was preying on my mind, that guy jumping off that cliff. And I said, you know what, we can't have an entrepreneurship week unless we do something. So came up with the idea of using this concept as a cross-campus activity. And this time gave the students 1 pack of Post-it notes. Okay, 3x100, 3x3 Post-its. And the idea is they had all week during Entrepreneurship Week when we unveiled this object the first day, this challenge. And they had 1 week to create as much value as possible using Post-it notes. Well, I told the Kauffman Foundation, they got so excited, they said, boy, can we roll this out around the country? And I said, let's not stop there. Let's roll it out around the world. I run conferences all over the planet, and one email, I was able to invite colleagues and their students to participate in this challenge. So we had thousands of students around the world creating as much value as they could with Post-it notes. And the idea was they could measure value in any way they wanted. So what would you do? You guys are now up to speed. You've done the $5, you've done the paper clips. What would you do with Post-it notes? What's that? A treasure hunt. You could use them to create a treasure hunt. Great idea. Any other thoughts? Yep, back there. You could put artwork on it. We could have poetry on it. Terrific. Let me play you a video clip, a short clip from one of the teams, and you tell me what kind of value was created by this team. Cool. What kind of value was created? What's that? Information and saving energy, right? So this was put on YouTube, and thousands of people watched this video. I know that I, for one, when I ended up leaving town to go away for spring break, I unplugged all the appliances in all the equipment in my office. So they ended up having a really big impact using Post-it notes for a sort of public service announcement. Pretty cool? So I could spend the entire talk just showing you video clips of what happened with Post-its, because they were really remarkable. And the teams did things. They created collaborative music projects. They created a company called Gumball Capital that actually turned into a real company, raising money for, they got solicitations for money to raise it for Kiva. But I want to move on, because again, this took on a life of its own. The next year, we decided to do this again. And I wanted to come up with a challenge that was somewhat different, because everyone had been thinking about Post-it notes all year. And I really wanted to stretch everyone's imagination, give them something that might be even a little harder. So the next year, here we were up at Memorial Auditorium. The whole place is packed. John Hennessy, the president of Stanford, introduces the week, welcomes everyone. I get up there and reveal the next challenge, the next object, and the air got sucked out of the room because they now had to create value with rubber bands. I wanted to stretch their imagination. And they could use as many rubber bands as they wanted, as many colors, as many sizes, as many as they wanted. What would you guys do if you were given this challenge? Any thoughts? Want me to show you one? Get your mind thinking? Okay, let me show you. This is actually some students from my class. I'm very proud of them. You tell me at the end what you think.
Tired of bikes gobbling up your laces? Troublesome doorways? Loose laces caught in vicious vacuums? Constantly fighting your garbage disposal for your shoes? Being hounded at school by shoe bandits? You need shoe bands! With our revolutionary technology, you'll never worry about shoelaces getting untied again. Shoe bands will make you more stylish, lose 10 pounds instantly, and will save baby penguins from global warming. Everybody loves them. 50 years of R&D utilizing Six Sigma, lean production, and other buzzword processes went into the development of shoe bands. Procured from pencil erasers, our rubber is vulcanized twice to remove bad karma. Here's what our customers have to say.
As an athlete, I need my shoes to stay on.
Do we need it loud?
Velcro provides some security, but to really get the job done, I use my shoe bands.
Recently, one of our customers wrote in to tell us about an experience where her shoe bands saved her life.
Should've worn shoe bands.
Ever since I started using shoe bands, I jacked up my bench press by 50 pounds. Sometimes I double band. Sometimes they've double banded.
Hello, I'm the founder of Shoe Bands Incorporated. But not only am I the CEO, I'm also an avid and dedicated customer.
Through this exclusive TV offer, receive not 2, but 3 packs of shoe bands for just 5 easy payments of $19.99. But wait, call in the next 60 seconds and we'll slash a payment and send you a llama. That's right, a llama. Order today.
Exclusive shipping and handling taxes may vary. Consult your physician before handling llama. And for more information, visit our website at www.shoebands.com.
Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. Pretty cool? Really funny. Anyway, so again, the people did incredible things with rubber bands, and we were stunned by the creativity. And one of the most interesting things is this all happened outside the scope of a classroom. Nobody told them what to do. No one gave them a grade. Nobody told them, that it was due at a certain time. They took all their extra free time and put all their creativity in doing these. So I love the fact that we have all these exercises that teach students how to turn problems into opportunities. But there's so many other things that go into being entrepreneurial. And when I wrote this book about what I wish I knew when I was 20, one of the other key concepts was how you make your own luck. When I grew up, my father always used to say, the harder you work, the luckier you get. How many of you have ever heard that? The harder I work, the luckier I get. Okay, it's one of those things that we're sort of drilled into our heads. But one of the most interesting things is I realized over the last years is that hard work is only the tip of the iceberg in making yourself lucky. There's so many things you can do to make yourself lucky beyond just putting in a lot of hard work and sweat. And I'm going to tell you a little story that comes from my own life that brings this to life. Okay, so a few years ago, my son was about this big. He's now about this big. And he and I were at the grocery store. And I was at the grocery store with him. We were sort of walking down one of the aisles, and a man came up to me. And he asked me how to make a can of lemonade. He had some lemonade can, and he said, "Excuse me, can you explain to me how to make this lemonade?" He was there with his daughter, who was about the same size. So he had an accent. He was clearly new to town, and I explained to him how to make the lemonade, 3 cans of water to the can of lemonade. For most people, that would be the end of the conversation, right? He'd say, thank you very much, and you'd go away. But you know what? I have learned from some of my wonderful colleagues that if you go somewhere and you don't meet someone new, at the minimum, you've missed out on the opportunity of learning something or making a new friend. At the maximum, you've missed out on the opportunity of making $1 million. So I've really absorbed this attitude, this philosophy of life. So when I was checking out of the grocery store, I had a choice of different lines. I got in line behind this fellow. Now, I was not stalking him, but I was just curious. I wanted to know a little bit more. Maybe there's something I could do for him. Maybe he's something I could do he could do for me. Maybe I'd learn something. So I said, gee, you have an interesting accent. Where are you from? He said, well, I'm from Chile. I'm from Santiago. And I said, oh, that's really interesting. What are you doing here? At first, he was a little put off, like, why am I asking these questions? But he kind of melted and finally said, well, I'm here. I'm going to be taking over my family's business in Chile, and I'm here for a while to learn about innovation and entrepreneurship. I said, that's so nice. I actually run this program at Stanford that focuses on entrepreneurship and high-tech entrepreneurship. If I can be helpful to you in any way, please let me know. So I gave him my business card, and that was the end of the conversation. But he did contact me. He sent me an email, and he said, I'd really love to take you up on your offer. So I introduced him to a few people, and I knew some folks from Chile, and I knew some venture capitalists who might be interested in Latin America, and I helped him out. He ended up bringing an entourage of people to Stanford, including the president of Chile, and I helped out with that a little bit. That was the end. He said, thank you very much, went back to Chile about a year and a half after he arrived. A few years later, I was going down to Santiago, and I sent him an email. I said, Eduardo, I'm going to be down in Santiago. Would you want to grab a cup of coffee? I'd love to find out what's going on with you. And he said, absolutely. But as the time came up, he was really too busy. And he said, Tina, I would love to see you, but I just can't get away. But do me a favor, come with a few of your colleagues and meet at the lobby of this building in downtown Santiago. So I said, sure. So I grabbed a few of my friends, and we went over there. We were met by one of his colleagues who took us to the roof of the building, where we were picked up by his family's helicopter, flown over the city, up to his family's ski resort, and then back down to the center of the city where we were left off. And the moral of this story is that, most people stop at looking at life as turning problems into opportunities. That's like turning lemons into lemonade. But real entrepreneurship is about turning lemonade into helicopters. Pretty cool? Anyway, I thought this was kind of a fun story, and it sort of had a fun punchline. But the fact is, you can make your own luck in lots of different ways. It's about being open, about being optimistic, and about engaging the world in a way that makes you pay attention to the opportunities around you every single minute, as opposed to being heads down and staying in the sort of the rut you're in every single day. You should look at the world as if you're a foreign traveler, as if you're looking at things for the first time and really, really examining them. So let's go on to another concept that I wrote about in my book. It is about failing fast and frequently, okay? I'm sure nobody here fails at Google, right? Not everything's always perfect. But, one of the secret sauces of Silicon Valley is that you need to be able to fail and fail gracefully. In fact, it is known that probably the ratio between your successes and your failures is pretty constant. If that ratio is constant, then if you want more successes, you're going to have to put up with more failures. And the key is you can't be so worried about failure that you're not willing to try. In fact, I have my students write failure resumes. Resumes with all their biggest screw-ups, personal, professional, and academic. And the reason for this is that if you write down your failures and then what you learned from it, that's when you really learn, is when you get to think back and say, boy, I won't do that again. And in fact, it's funny, when I wrote about this in my book, and when I showed an early draft to one of my students, she said, boy, I was really interested in this idea of failure resumes. I'd love to see what one looks like. So I said, okay, we could do that. And I decided to put my own failure resume in the book. I think I spent more time on those 2 pages of the book than any other pages because it was a little bit nerve-wracking. But it hasn't come back to bite me, and I would encourage you to try it for yourself. It is really quite an interesting process to think about that. And I want to show you here, to amplify this point, I want to show you a video clip that came from the innovation tournament. Remember I told you about the rubber bands and the paper clips? This was a clip I'm going to show you from one of the teams from the challenge with rubber bands. And this was a team that failed pretty miserably, and how they took that failure and turned it into a success.
Everybody has those days where one soft, sweet song's just enough to clear my head. Fall on real life, fall on me. Is anybody left there sane?
Awesome, thank you.
And slide on over and accept fate. There's bound to be a powerful thing, and if it's just that you're weak, can we talk about it? It's getting so damn creepy, just nursing this ghost of a chance. The fiction, the romance, and the technicolor dreams. Black and white people. One boy headstrong, the living here is just plain. He's pushed down so hard you can hear him start to sink. And this one last round of petty conversation, you hold on, boy, 'cause you won't go down like this. You just roll on over and lay down till it's more than you can take. If it's just that you're weak, talk about it. It's getting so damn creepy, just nursing this ghost of a chance. The fiction, the romance, and the technicolor dream of black and white people.
Pretty cool? I mean, they could have decided just not even to submit this, but they ended up winning one of the biggest prizes because they ended up really capturing the essence of entrepreneurship. It's about trying lots of things and keeping what works. And here is the coolest punchline of all. This team was made up of the biodesign fellows at Stanford. These are students who come from medicine and business and engineering, and they spend a year shadowing doctors, identifying the problems they have, coming up with inventions, and eventually putting together a business plan. That team that did this won the campus-wide business plan competition, competing against hundreds of other business plans. And of course, they never would have gotten to that success if they hadn't embraced this concept that they had to fail many times along the way before coming up with something that was a big success. So I want to lead to a next topic, and that is, don't wait to be anointed. You know, we often are in situations where we wait for someone else to come and give us an assignment, to give us a job, to give us a role, to give us a promotion. But you know, this is not what people who are entrepreneurial do. In any organization, in anywhere in life, there are always problems to be solved. There are always white spaces in the organization. There are always ways that you can contribute beyond what you even imagined. And you don't have to wait for someone else to give you those assignments. And let me tell you a quick little personal story that amplifies this. When I was a kid, my father became a very successful multinational corporate executive. But he started out as an engineer. He was an engineer, and we got used to every couple of years he'd have another promotion, you know, to a director, to a VP, to executive vice president, to a senior executive, blah, 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 blah. So this was something I was very proud of him. He did very, very well. But then I decided to start my own company. And I came to him, and I made out business cards, and they said, Tina Seelig, president. And he looked at them, and he looked at me, and he got really mad. He got annoyed with me. He said, how can you call yourself president? You can't just call yourself president. And I said, well, why not? he had grown up in this environment where you have to wait for other people to anoint you, other people to give you that mantle of power. But entrepreneurs are those people who make their own business cards. They're the people who build, put the ladder below them as opposed to waiting for someone else to put the ladder in front of them. And the fact is, this doesn't just happen as an entrepreneurial, attitude, starting your own company. It's something that happens here. I mean, my goodness, Larry and Sergey are not the only entrepreneurs at Google, right? I mean, every single one of you are entrepreneurial, solving problems along the way that come up. And that's the point. You don't have to wait for someone else to give you permission to do something. You can do it yourself. And I want to play a video clip here that came again from the innovation tournament. This is again the ones with the rubber bands. This is a team that captured the essence of the fact that there is a very tiny switch between doing nothing and doing something. And it's really up to you whether you decide to flip that switch and really make things happen.
I worked out for the first time in weeks.
I kissed my wife deeply with joy.
I finally took my chubby butt to the gym.
I carried a package for someone who was overburdened.
I said thank you more often.
I mustered up the courage to ask my crush out.
I spoke with my dear friend on the phone for an hour and a half. I am so glad to reconnect with her. True friends are treasures in life.
Let us tell you about how these work.
Okay.
These bands here, so we could try to rally everyone behind one cause, but we're not necessarily going to get people to agree with us.
The Do Band is based on two insights we had. One, you can't force someone to agree with your cause. Without buy-in, nothing real is going to happen. Two, everyone has their own cause, something they should do, they want to do, but they just never get to it. And this is what we're after. We want to get people over their block and get them to do it. Enter the Do Band.
The Do Band has a simple set of rules. 1. Put it on with a promise, and don't take it off until you've fulfilled it. 2. Record your success online. Share your story. 3. Pass it on.
Every Do Band comes with a serial number. When you record your success, you can see what else your band has inspired. Each Do Band creates a chain of successes, and that's just one Do Band. With many Do Bands, it grows even quicker. And with the addition of the virtual Do Band, the numbers multiply astoundingly fast.
DoBands.blogspot.com.
What's happening with your Do Band?
Oh, I actually passed it off.
The Do Band creates value by appealing to our inner desires. In just 36 hours, we created social value, health value, entertainment value, and political value, to name a few. We may not have collected $500, but Do Bands kicked off a new summer camp, initiated tons of phone calls to mothers, inspired compliments and apologies, healthy eating, and many other personal contributions to the greater good. These little things add up, and success is infectious. And one more thing. Actually, people did donate over $500 to the charities that they chose. And this is only the beginning. Imagine it.
Pretty cool? Great. So the corollary to this is never miss an opportunity to be fabulous. And let me tell you the evolution of this phrase. As I mentioned, I teach this course on creativity and innovation, and I never use slides in my class because it's all experiential. I set up things, often things I've never done before, and get the students to experiment with all the variables related to creativity and innovation. But the first day of class, I do show some slides to basically show them a roadmap of what's going to come ahead in the next 10 weeks. And at the very bottom, the first day, last slide, the last bullet point is never miss an opportunity to be fabulous. And I basically say, I promise I am going to do my very, very best. I'm going to give it my all teaching this class, and I expect the same from you. And the fact is, I would be happy to give everyone in the class an A, but but the bar is really high, and I expect all of you to jump over it. This is different from most other classes, right? Most other classes, the teachers tell you what you need to do to get an A. I hate that question, right? Will this be on the exam? I look at my kid, who is a very, very sharp kid. He does, and I'm sure many of you in this room, I won't ask you to raise your hand, always did the minimum amount to get an A. Could you imagine what the world is like if everyone does the minimum amount to get an A? The fact is, people who do amazing things go well beyond what it takes to get an A. What's the equivalent of an A+++++++? The fascinating thing about this concept is that it is incredibly sticky, because I believe each of us is actually waiting for this instruction. A few months after my class began a couple of years ago, in fact, the story will date itself in a minute. You can tell me what year it was. One of my students was sitting outside when I got to class, and she was listening to her iPod Nano. Now, I had never seen a Nano before. They were brand new. And I said, hey, Becky, can I take a look at the Nano? I haven't seen it before. She said, sure. She took it off, handed it to me. And apparently when you get it or order it online, you can have it engraved on the back with something. People usually have their email address or their phone number. She turned it over, and on the back was engraved with what? Never miss an opportunity to be fabulous. That is what she wanted to look at every day. And I think that's what most of us actually really want to look at. We want to say, I have done the very best I can. Because I think that's one of the reasons why people get frustrated in their lives, is because they're not challenging themselves. They're not in a position where they really are doing the very best they can. So I want to leave with a video clip. This is actually the trailer for a movie. What happened is, remember I told you the Kauffman Foundation was excited about our doing this innovation tournament, and we rolled it out around the world the first year when we did it with Post-it notes. Well, they had a professional video team that was going to be capturing the week. And the video team said, terrific, this is what we want to capture the week, is this innovation tournament. So they put video crews around the world. They were in Australia, they were in Japan, they were in Thailand, they were in Ecuador, they were in the United States, they were in India, probably other countries I'm forgetting right now. They made a movie called Imagine It. And in fact, you can download the movie for free at imagineitproject.com. But I'm going to show you the trailer for the movie. You'll recognize some of the cast of characters, you'll recognize some of the stories, and it was pretty terrific at capturing the essence of what happened with this around the world.
Imagine the future the way you'd like to see it.
If you can imagine it, then it can be.
Go to the problem and imagine a world where that problem has been removed, and then say, well, how many steps are there from this world to that world?
Imagining a new future, a new path, a new direction.
If you have the power to imagine it, you have the power to change the world.
Imagine a more perfect world than the one we live in, and then to actually engage in making that happen.
I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky. I think about it every night and day. Spread my wings and fly away. I believe I can soar. See me running through that open door. I believe I can.
People think that pressure is bad, but pressure in a very short period of time can be very stimulating.
It taps into the rawest level of their creativity.
It puts down the gauntlet of challenge and inspiration.
Sometimes silence, there are miracles in life I must.
You never have infinite resources, and you're given this constraint, and in this constraint it's Post-it pads.
We define the value of our project as innovating outside of the box, and the box here is actually Post-it note.
I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky. I think about it every night and day. Spread my wings and fly away. I believe I can soar.
Take your husband to the school in Boston.
That open door. I believe I can fly.
Grand total $3,300.
I believe I can fly high. 'Cause I believe in you. If I can.
Entrepreneurship is an extreme sport. You gotta get out and do it.
This is an important way to progress in life.
It's an experiment in focus.
I bet you'll be blown away.
I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky. I think about it every night and day. Spread my wings and fly away. I believe I can soar. See me running through that open door. I believe I can fly. I believe I can fly. I
exercise demonstrate that we might be pushing these kids off of this perfectly good cliff, but also giving them a pretty good parachute so that they feel actually comfortable when they go out in the world, taking on challenges, taking risks, making things happen in ways that they might not have been comfortable with before this. So I want to thank you very, very much, and I am be delighted to answer any questions. So, any thoughts, questions? Yeah, Amy.
Tina, on your failure resume, what was the thing that stayed with you the most throughout your career? What did you feel had the most impact in changing your direction?
In my failure resume? Okay, you gotta bring that up. Let's see. Most of the time, the failures on there were failures that came from not really paying attention to what was really going on and making assumptions. So like going in my first job after college, going into a company and thinking I knew the way things worked and acting based on the way I thought it worked as opposed to actually taking the time to figure out the way it really did work and then acting accordingly. Or things where I didn't necessarily align my goals with the goals of the other people I was working with. And you can easily do that. All you have to do is actually pay attention again to what the other people's goals are and figure out some ways to get them aligned. Any other questions? No? Well, if not, I'm happy to talk to anyone afterwards. Thank you very much.